Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Sam Namora here, and I'm delighted to have with me two guests tonight, Chris Venus and Grant Pryor. Chris and Grant and myself, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you
Good
for
evening.
having me here.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so
Uh,
much, Sam.
we picked up a topic, like three of us, we decided to talk about this. Uh, it's not the new topics. I think the hate, racism, discriminations, and all this stuff. Personally, I think it exists for the from the existence of the human being.
Pretty much. Yep.
Yeah,
I agree with
yeah.
that 100%.
It's
And so
as
many other factors.
old as creation itself, pretty much.
So
Yeah.
true. But I think what we would like to discuss tonight is, I think in a way we can agree there is a new environment that we don't really feel like it's okay to keep quiet about it, and we call that is we see the increase sign of hate, racism, discrimination, and all form of injustice against others. So Mia and myself and my guests would like to dig deeper into this, and I would let start with the from the right. That's as a Muslim. From the right would be Grant. So I'll leave the mic for you, Mike. Grant.
Oh, well, thank you so much for letting me start. That's great. Um, I, I think the biggest thing we need to do is we first got to realize that it all depends on us being truthful and understanding that we all have biases. It's not just stuck to one race or one religion, or we all have these things that we've socially made and judgments of other people. And by doing so, if we can come together and be honest about our own biases, we can help each other and help the community figure out what's the next step. How's the best way to move forward together? Because this is the only way we're going to do it. We're going to be together. That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris?
I guess I mean I have to wholeheartedly agree with that, and that it's also, I think, just unpacking the root of why racism exists, and
Right.
kind of looking at where those sources are, and then what steps do we take to call it out or help other people be lifted out of that mindset in order to achieve that end, as Grant said.
Absolutely, and I can add to that as well. Myself, born raised in a different country, that really the word racism, discrimination is not really part of our psyche or the part of our even terminologies, because we did not really even maybe, and it did. I mean, I'm not. It does exist on all scales, but we didn't really know about it, or I didn't feel about it personally, because we were just living just like among a group of people who just about the same color, the same kind of like very similar religion, very similar beliefs and all the stuff. And because I was part of the majority for so long, I didn't really pay attention with the limited space of freedom in the old country, even to experience it myself. And that's why one of the issues that I'm really facing is so many people might be like they might do or perform or get they do something that even they don't know they're being, I don't want to use the word racist, but maybe they're a little bit offended to other people. So it seems to me like really, I mean, that's not only the definition of racism we need to start with, but also to make sure there's so many people who are racist, but they don't even think they are, because they don't know. It's not like what I know they're racism, because it's very hard to admit it, even though they are in a way part of that act of like unkind or wrong to other people, especially minorities.
It's the characteristic of homogeneity, like everything being the same, as you were saying. And
Yes.
it's like, a fish doesn't realize it's in, like, what's water, because water is its environment. I mean, that might be a little bit of a weird comparison, but the thing is, if you're always in an environment that is just always behaving in a certain way that isn't actually being introspective and actually kind of dealing with these things, you're
Right.
then going to just, it may come out of you out of sheer accident or ignorance. And ignorance, not in the sense of, to say the people, a person is ignorant is stupid.
Right.
Ignorance really means just a lack of knowledge and awareness about something.
That's very true.
Absolutely.
That's very true. So Sam, like what you brought up, because you grew up in Syria, correct?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Yes.
So being in Syria and being the majority, as you said, you never made a racist joke or thought a racist thought or anything in your life? I'm just
Actually,
curious.
back then, I didn't even know these were a racist word or discriminatory words. But after as Chris said, after I moved out of that environment, this is where I started to realize how much we were doing some kind of act of it's not being nice toward other people, but we didn't even know. We make joke on this minorities
Jokes.
group. Let's
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
we titled some other people in a certain way. We make we prejudge some ethnic group just because of whatever.
Yeah.
But back then we didn't even know personally that this is not really it's hurting other people. But when we came here
For sure.
to North America,
Yeah.
and we have that platform of freedom, and even minorities start to talk, this is where you realize, oh my goodness, how many times I said this, oh my goodness, how much I said this, I said that. So that's why personally, especially for us new immigrant, I feel like there is a learning curve for all of us as well. Because in a way you are a subject or you're being a victim of discriminations and hate and racism, but also on the other hand you might be part of another actions toward another group that you're really causing just about the same. So having
I think what you said, Sam, is really, really good. Like if we unpack that, then technically for myself, who grew up in Tabor, super homogenous, not really any diversity there at all. We had maybe a couple First Nation kids that went to school. We had one Asian kid that did. He was from China. His name's Michael Howe. His family owned the Chinese restaurant in town. Like that was the diversity that we had there. We didn't have any Muslims. We didn't know anything about it. We didn't have any black people that went to school with us. So you knew nothing. So whereas you said yourself, like you made jokes, and I made tons of jokes. I'm Ukrainian, my background. So people make Ukrainian jokes all the time. We used to.
Right. I always heard them when I was a younger
kid.
Yeah.
Tons of Ukrainian jokes. I use them, and I'm Ukrainian.
Oh, happy Easter, all by the way. Sorry, we missed that.
Yes, very much so. And so I think what's interesting is how you said you came here and then you got to see the other side.
Right.
Whereas people still living here, we haven't seen, like I myself, obviously I've moved around the world. I've seen different things, but lots of people who live here haven't seen it. They don't think it's a big deal because it hasn't been directed at them. I do think it's changing though, because I've heard a lot now, like that only white people can be racist. And that hurts white people because they're like, what? Or that with white privilege, and I totally acknowledge my luck in the world of being born in Canada and being born a guy, and I do have privilege. But a lot of people, if they're struggling in their life, they can't see their privilege. So they're like, well, I'm not privileged. I'm living on food stamps, or I barely have enough money to feed my family, and I don't see this privilege. And it is ignorance, like you said, Chris, but not ignorance is stupid, is you just don't know what you don't know.
And it takes, and so unfortunately, I mean, it seems like it's not happening. The awakening is not happening fast enough for some people, or fast enough for some people in the world, right? It takes sometimes a big change in somebody's life to then really see that. I mean, I look back at what I've done in my life, and I know that when I was growing up here in Calgary, I lived in the Northeast. I lived in a Northeast community, and unfortunately, I remember an occasion in, I think, the third grade, I used a pejorative against a Sikh kid, and I feel bad about that. Absolutely. And sometimes, I mean, I really wish I could find that fella and, give him a heartfelt apology. But I now know what I was a product of. I was a product of the allowances of the things that were coming out of the adults' mouths around me. Right. And this is not to condemn the adults around me, but the thing is at that time, I realized that some of those things that they were doing around me were, of course, naturally in error. And then what kind of really changed, you guys all talked about changes in your lives that started to bring up that change of looking inward. I'd say one of the first things that happened for me is that in 6th grade, I moved to La Ronge, Saskatchewan, which is a predominantly First Nations Cree community. So there I was, like, even though on an administrative and let's say a colonial level, white adults still control everything up there. But when you're in the 6th grade and you're the minority in the class, and everybody else mostly everybody around you is Cree, and you're instead of French class, you're doing 3 hours of Cree class once a week.
Really? You guys did Cree class?
Yeah, actually. So Tanse to all of the Treaty 6 people.
Oh, you can speak Cree?
All I can say is Tanse.
It's like when I learned French, all I can say is like bonjour, comment ça va? I didn't retain very much.
So naturally, of course, at times, because I was a new kid to the community as well, too. I only lived there for a year. Easily targeted a little bit, and that shook my identity. And then after that, I moved to the Lower Mainland to a community called Tawasin. That was very much, ethnically diverse, but still kind of, in the sphere of. It felt like 1950s suburban La La Land a little when I look back at it. And then I moved to, my parents broke up, they divorced, and then we moved back to Alberta, my mom and my brother. We lived in Claire's home for 2 months and then back to Calgary. Right. And then I've been here ever since. So, but out of those kinds of small incidents in my life, those were kind of formative for me. But then what really changed it was then, as some people might know, when I embraced Islam and some of the teachings around that actually then was a big knock upside my head about the idea of my privilege and my awareness around racism and bigotry. Not to say that, I was like some sort of person with, with foul language or behaviors, but it definitely opened. I'll just finish with this just quickly. It opened up windows into my soul.
Okay.
That's what I'll say.
So this privilege, white privilege.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, let's agree on one thing here. We're not running for offices or something like this. We want to be spontaneous. We just want to be easy
Sam,
conversation. And if we're not here to, as it said, so let's have an easy conversation, just like we have it in the den or in a living room. So, Chris, so you think this white privilege is it? Did you experience it yourself, and is it true, or think so. It's a myth?
No, it's totally true. It's totally true. I want to move to Grant. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Chris, go ahead. No, I think it's true. I mean, there's lots of factors as to why it's true. There are going to be people who are going to push back and deny that. Again, like Grant said, it's like I suffered and, I'm white and I was poor and I had poverty. It's like, okay, we get that. A lot of people actually grow up poor. That's not what the whole white privilege thing is. It's like, even though I'm white, growing up poor might not necessarily be something that actually cuts me off at my knees because I'm white and male. My name gets considered on a resume much more easily and other things like that, So, and there's studies that prove that kind of stuff, right?
Like what I would say, Sam, if you would ask me that.
Yeah, sure. That would be,
15 years ago, I would have been like, it's not true.
Blowing the raspberry.
True. Yeah, it's not true. But since then, I have been other places. Like I was in Los Angeles and I have a really good friend of mine who has lived in the same neighborhood for a long, long time. And if he jogs outside of his neighborhood, we had this discussion the other day. I don't know if he's watching right now, but Kev, if you're watching. And if he jogs outside of his neighborhood, like 5 blocks, he'll get stopped. Someone will call the cops on him for being in that neighborhood, even though he's been in there for so long. And he said, like, the first time it happens, okay. The second time it happens, fine. The third time it happens, it gets to a point where you're like, I don't bring my wallet. The police officers are on you. And I think about my life. I can jog anywhere in Calgary I want. It doesn't matter. No one's going to stop me. No one's going to call the cops on me. And so I do recognize because I'm white.
Oh, you feel that way, eh?
Well, the thing is, I don't even think about it. That's the thing. It's not even something I go, I'm going to go jogging and I can do it because I'm white. Don't think about
Okay.
it. It doesn't come in my head. Whereas my friend has to do it, and he has to bring his dog, or he has to bring someone else with him because he has to think about that thing. And that is the privilege, is the fact that it doesn't mean you didn't go through barriers or you didn't go
Right.
through trials. It just
Right.
means that color wasn't one of them. That's it. That's the one thing it means. And that's what I've learned by that with privilege, you know? So
So I had a conversation with one guy because I always point of views of myself. So I have this conversation before with the one guy about this white privileges and stuff, and he said, So what do you want me to do? You want me to hate the fact that I'm white?" I said, "No, I don't think that is the point. I don't think like I'm asking you if you to hate yourself. I'm just asking, is it really exist? Do you feel like you have advantage over somebody else just because of the way you were created with the darker skin or white skin or lighter skins, as you said?" And what you say in the Grant is you didn't think about it because you're you're in your domain,
never,
quote unquote.
yeah.
You're in your domain.
Let's say,
like,
okay,
you
if I
never
can.
notice. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, you go ahead, Grant. Go
Well,
ahead.
like, I was curious because I saw Muhammad wrote in the comments about that there's privilege, like Arab privilege in the Middle East. I don't know. Is that true? Is that more of a thing? Or when you think of in India, lighter skin gives you more privilege, and why people try and whiten their skin there. And it's pervasive in a lot of things. I think what's happening here, though, is because in Canada, we've been so homogenized, and now we're getting a lot of people from other places. We're having to look at ourselves and say, wow, I didn't even know that exists, because how would I know? No one's pointing it out to me. Like,
that's exactly it.
We're not all on the playground and my friends are like, you got white privilege. Well, you're white, dude. Like we're all white.
Yeah, and again, it's not, and the whole idea of white privilege is not to say like hate myself. It's just to acknowledge that, like my dad never had to have a conversation with me about, hey, if a police officer stops you, do this and that and this. Because, and it's not to put down police officers, but with certain training regimes and how, like, and this is more of a commentary about the United States. I mean, and Canada has its issues too. It's like you get candidates who become officers of the law, and they may hold those biases out of ignorance. Again, not out of stupidity, out of ignorance, out of not being exposed to those people in a greater part of their life, to then actually understand the other side. So therefore, that's what brings about that kind of like, no, this is the kind of the way. It's like just understanding things under the cultural mores of the people you're around all the time. And the Muhammad brought up Arab privilege. I see that there is Arab privilege. Yes, I think there is Arab privilege that exists.
Get me in trouble again. Okay, I'm sorry.
Hey, I will say it though. I will say it. Don't worry. If they have a problem with it, they can talk to me, not you. I will say that there is Arab privilege, but there's also colorism in other parts of the world, like Grant said too. It's in Brazil. It's in South Africa. It's in India. Jamaica, people using Fair and Lovely all the time. The Philippines. Like, stop it. Stop chemically bleaching your skin, people. The melanin helps you.
Well,
coming from two really white guys.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want sunburns.
I mean, this is the contrast that I really I want to bring to the table here. Just like because it's somehow experienced a very similar way of feeling, is that you feel like you were born in an environment that they all look the same, act the same, believe in the same, and all that stuff. So everything looks ordinary. So all of a sudden, your environment changed. You moved to a bigger city. You start to invite more people into the country. And for me, I moved to from that country to another country. All of a sudden, I feel like I live in a cosmic village where everybody live in Calgary. Like, I can be here in Calgary, see all probably 180 nationalities.
Yeah, it's super cool. I love it.
So really, the experience of other people, other belief, other skins. Like I run to very, let's say, a hard time with my own skin, and I don't mean skin the color, but my own background is when you try even to be tolerant to other people, where people might say, "What the hell you're doing? You're not supposed to do this because you're not like that. We're not like this." Even if I want to say Merry Christmas, at one point I was criticized. Why you say Merry Christmas? You're not supposed to say Merry Christmas. So these are the stuff that really didn't really happen back in Syria.
Yeah.
But here in Canada, we are learning how to accept other people. So I really feel for us, Muslims, Middle Easterns, and all that stuff, it's like we've seen it from both ends, where you are the oppressed, and where other people might think into you are the oppressor too, and you don't even know that you're doing that, or you're a part of it. And I know this is a very heavy word to take, but honestly, this is how I feel, and this is what I think, and maybe I'm wrong, so I'll leave it up to you guys to discuss that with me. And I'm not talking about,
I don't think you're.
but in general, human being do act this way.
I don't think you're wrong at all. I think you've come full circle in realizing things about yourself and oppression and stuff like that as well. And we all come to that, like Chris came to that and I came to that. And it's what brings us together, because we can come to that. Like, we can understand. And like Ekram wrote in the comments about what the pandemic has done. And I really think that is one of the biggest reasons why stuff like this has been increasing, because with the pandemic, or with even in Alberta being oil and gas, and I know that's controversial. Some people only want to talk about oil and gas, but there's 100,000 workers out of work with families and kids. And so when you try and tell somebody who's out of work to care about my plight, but they can't feed their family and they're worried about it, like, this is something I'm actually going through right now. So I can speak on this, like, haven't worked in a year. So, I mean, there's definite stress there. And so I understand why people look at it and go, I'm worried about myself. I got my head down. I can't think about Asian hate or Islamophobia or all the other things. I'm trying to feed my family and figure what I'm going to do. And I think that's the difficulty here. Like, the pandemic has definitely brought that to it. And the oil and gas industry being dead has definitely made that more a larger issue. You know, even the anti-mask things. Like, Sam, when we were at the rally, you had mentioned that at the anti-mask, there's a lot of like racist people there. But I know not all of them are racist. A lot of them are just wanting to go back to work because they're desperate. And desperate times makes people do dumb things and lash out at the wrong people. Yeah. And I think that's a really big thing.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, when I ask my fellow, European heritage Canadians, I'd say I'm not looking for you guys to necessarily be always like on a front line of a protest against race. Like, we have to create an atmosphere of not just non-racism, but anti-racism. And that's not everybody's vibe is going to be holding a placard and marching and shouting against it. That's not maybe the way. The real way it works is conversations with family members. And so one of the clearest ways is, like, honestly, if you're it takes courage, but if you have that awkward uncle in your family that says the stupidest stuff at the Thanksgiving dinner table, or at Christmas, or at gatherings or whatever, or even online, here's some advice: is that you got to have a conversation with that person, but not in front of everybody. Because the thing is, when you try to correct somebody for their behavior, especially maybe if someone's your elder, and this is a value anybody can get behind. Right. So if you have some sort of bigoted auntie or uncle or relative or cousin, you have to, if you notice it and you do want to change it with maybe saying something positive to them, is that you've got to Muhammad's asking about anti-racism. Okay, I'll explain that in a sec. But the idea would be you got to do that privately, because when you do that publicly to someone, that shame is most likely going to make them lash out and go, no, I'm not like that, because it makes them feel awful there publicly. And they're like, how dare you say that to me at a dinner table or at a gathering or something. But when you can actually say, like, hey, Uncle Fred, can we go for a coffee? I just want to talk to you about some of that stuff. that you said the other day, and I just want to let you know how you feel about it, how I feel about it. And then when you can start having that kind of conversation, you may not win that conversation from the get-go. From the get-go, you might have an opportunity to, have other conversations in the future. Now, anti-racism. So non-racism quickly is like, I'm not racist and you don't do anything about it.
Right.
Anti-racism is actually taking some sort of a stance and championing, and actually dismantling some sort of barrier that foments racism or bigotry in your life. Like, now there's all these new terms too: institutional racism. There's also private racism, which is, bigotry and stuff like that, which can be affiliated with bigotry. So that's how I would characterize it as my personal definition. Like, being anti-racist is really the goals people should aim for.
And I think we're getting into the whole conversation of, and I see a lot of the comments too about being white privilege and what that actually means and how do you identify it. And I'll tell you a story. This is super quick, but when I was a kid, we used to call, when I was in Los Angeles, my wife invited people over for a Christmas dinner, and we had a bowl of nuts. Now, this can be a horrible story, and I'm putting it out there because I don't care, but bowl of nuts. And she had a bunch of friends from Los Angeles Entertainment. They're all there. And I was going to offer them some nuts. And so they were like, what kind of nuts are in there? And I'm like, well, there's almonds, pecans, cashews. And then there's another nut in there that when I was a kid, we called it an N-word toe. I don't know if Chris is familiar with that.
Never heard that.
Yes. And that was, and I said it out loud because that's what it was. And my wife looked at me and was like, what did you just say? And I'm like, well, they just asked what kind of nuts there were. There's a cashew, and that was the name of the nut. Now, the nut you didn't
even think about it.
No, it's a Brazil nut. That's what. But my parents, my family, no one ever called it that. They called it the N-word toe. That's what they called it.
Yes,
I didn't know another word for that thing. So I mean, that's where we're coming from. From a time when that was a regular thing to now, we are making progress. It's not great. I'm not saying the times are great right now, but things are changing, and trying to get that perspective for an older generation is going to be hard. But It's my kids that will really fix it. They're the ones that are far more accepting and way more diverse with their schooling.
True.
And I think the end of racism begins when we all are so intermingled, no one can say what race you are. I think that's the only time it's going to end.
Do you see that? Do you think this has happened? Do you think we're gonna live and see that so-called no racism, or it's gonna be always there?
We won't see it. But I think eventually, I think eventually.
No, I mean, I want to be realistic. So if you try to visualize it,
no, we won't see it. But maybe with aliens come, because then we can focus our hate on something else instead of each other. Maybe that'll do it. But I mean, I don't think so, because
I would say as long as we agree just to accept our difference, to coexist and work together toward common goal, common interest, and also toward our families or toward our country. So I think these differences always going to be there. It's not going to be gone, as you said, unless we have some external creatures that all of a sudden that's going to unite us. Just like
we hate them. They're green.
Independence Day. If you remember the movie, The Independence Day, that's the movie where everybody came together and they put this Arab and Jews and they say, "Oh, guys, look at this. Let's do that." They say, "What? Arab Jews? Okay."
It's
so really we picked up the topic. Sorry if I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but we picked up the topic is why there is we can feel it. There is a rise in sentiment of hate and racism. We cannot deny it. Like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, from my experience, things were much different. I do feel now people are these walls are getting thicker between communities instead of getting people together. For some, maybe it's only me, but I really think social media, internet, and satellite and cell phones and all the stuff made everybody lives in their own bubble, and I really think this is not really helping out.
Like, I wonder. Oh, sorry. I think maybe we cut out there for a second.
No,
But,
are you with me, Grant?
yeah, I'm with you. I got you.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if I ask you these questions, why there is more presence of our signs of racism, discriminations, hate, anger, especially comes and all packaged under a word of patriot. You're not patriotic. You're not really. You don't love the country as much as I do, or I'm the one who love the country and you don't. So we have all these hiddens. Or maybe, and now we have the anti-maskers. They can use that, but really you can feel that there's really another hidden drives inside. So from being who you are, Tabor, and so your background is really diverse. Why there's an increase in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't know I don't know if I'd say it has increased. If you look at it as this has always been underneath, and now just with social media, there's a way easy outlet to type it and put it out there, to be more, like you said, in an echo chamber, your own cognitive dissonance, where I hear what I hear on Fox News or I hear what I hear on CNN. And it's these little bubbles that we live in. And there is this, I think it's just becoming more verbal. And in a way, I feel like this is cleaning out the wound. We gotta, like, Donald Trump didn't make racism happen there. What he gave was a voice that said, yeah, if you feel this way, you can kind of say it. And people did. So it actually is a better way to do it. It's cleaning out that wound of that's never healed, that people still have these things in them. They're just quiet about it. They just say these type of things with their friends in the basement. They just don't
But
put
he
them
knew
on.
about it. He knew so well that exists.
Of course.
He knew so well.
Because
he kind of like discovered a product and he just brought it to the market.
Yeah.
And the market, there's a taste for
and
it.
there was and the market just loved it and just picked it up and just boom.
Because I think economically people, and it does economics, like if you think about the Arab Spring, Sam, what made the Arab Spring happen? It's because people couldn't afford bread anymore. Like it came down to food and they freaked out.
The young fella in Tunisia who immolated himself because he didn't have the right permit.
It was just reached the wall.
It just reached this point. And I think in America, especially, there's a economic diversity between the rich and the poor that's been exasperated because of whatever you want to say, but capitalism has a part of that, and oligarchy has a part of that, and corporations.
We all have choices in different forms of oligarchy nowadays. That's what our democracies have transitioned into.
Very true, Chris. Very true. And so I think people are desperate, and like I said before, desperation makes people do crazy things, and they blame the wrong people. It's not that refugee that's coming here, that Syrian immigrant that's coming here that's causing your job. There's other things, but he's an easy target because if you think of conservatives, we think of
because
UCP.
of him. Because of him, I lost my job. Let me give a new angle, or maybe a different angle for us, especially being an immigrant. In order to immigrate to Canada, you have to have something to offer the country. We're talking about for the last who knows how many years, 200 to 300,000 each year. New Canadian comes here. So in order to come to Canada, a huge portion of that immigration program, you have to have skills, you have to have money, you have to have language, you have to hit the ground running. Otherwise, the Canadian government said, or the immigration, the Canadian, the refugee and immigrant services will say, no need, we don't need that. So this immigration policy is bringing people who are ready to work. Next day, job, money, qualifications, and all the stuff. For the last, let's say, 20 years or maybe 15 years, since 2015, when Harper introduced this, I think, a skilled worker program and all that, if you remember that. I'm not really sure about the exact date, but roughly. So for the longest time, we have these new immigrants who come here and start working. So when you work, I don't want to say that you've taken somebody else's job, but anyway, that you enter the market, and that market, unless if I'm born and raised in Canada, unless I'm really like up to speed in my educations, up to speed in my knowledge, up to my speed on my resume, all of a sudden there's a competition. There's somebody's coming from the outside competing with my job, and all of a sudden I can say I'm not getting a job because of that guy there. And it could be that one of also not only the Trump phenomenon, but also maybe that's really the hidden one of the hidden reasons, because people for the longest time believed in the Canadian dreams, in the American dreams. Life is easy if you work, you can afford a house, afford a car, afford everything. Everything comes to you easy. You go get a job, get education, get your degree, get your whatever, and boom, you get a job.
Yeah,
now it's not happening. Now it's not happening.
That narrative is blown to pieces. So anybody born 1977 onward, I count myself in between 1977 to 85. So we're called, the new little subgroup, we're called Zennials, meaning we're kind of like
really?
Gen X. And
I'm a baby boomer, so I'm the lucky generation.
We're a little bit of the Gen X and a little bit of the millennial, and everybody's Zennialing up. We've been handed a soggy wet bag, and for some of us, we can't get over that fact, right? There are some of us who are cohorts, or generational cohorts. We can't get over the fact that we've been handed this soggy bag where everything's fallen out from it, and our education system has failed us, has failed to also properly educate us into actual other forms of diverse forms of a job market. Because then when you're the sad sap who's in his mid-30s, who doesn't have everything going for him anymore, and then another person shows up on the shore, yes, the market is now, you're competing against that guy. And yes, that guy is going to have adversity against him, because not all of his qualifications may be recognized in some of the cases of the professional associations, those kinds of things. His name might not be, he's got a weird sounding name, Chuck. Like they'll just throw the resume out. There's definitely
Usama.
Yeah, exactly. I love your name, by the way.
Thanks.
So, it has to do with all those kinds of things, I think, and it runs into the economic stuff. And then, unfortunately, it's so interconnected with, again, the ignorance. But racism really starts from a point of arrogance, right? And in our Islamic tradition, we always have the story about Satan, also known as Iblis, and he was commanded to prostrate before Adam, and he didn't do so. So that was out of arrogance. Satan's the first racist, because Satan's creation is made out of fire, mankind's out of clay, right? So it's the first kind of, like, if you want to say a metaphorical, not metaphorical, but I would say like a meta narrative that says, like, hey, somebody of different quality is competing against another person. One person takes a stance of arrogance, and then that arrogance breeds and grows and grows. And then you have people being racist and ignorant, not maybe out of a sense of arrogance. There are people that do definitely have that in their hearts. And then you have, like we said, the people who grow up with it and swim in it and don't know it exists. And then when it's challenged against economic factors, educational factors, opportunity factors, it's like, hey, where's my slice of the pie? And then it manifests into the lashing out, as Grant talks about.
And I think another one, and actually Mohammed brought this up in the chat, but is a good point. Alberta predominantly was Christian, right? It was way more, like, the first Muslim I ever saw was Morgan Freeman in Robin Hood on the movie. That's the first time I've ever seen.
That's actually right. Like, yeah, man.
That's it. Right. That was the first one.
Throwback.
So, right? Just aged myself.
Yeah.
But the point is that Christian belief, right? Because that's the center of what we were. Now you're getting something other than that. So whether that was Hindi as well, but you're getting something else. And that makes people go, because religion, now I'm not religious, so I don't have that as much. But people, when something's challenged on their main belief of who they are, that's tough. That's tough for people to be like, should a woman be able to wear a hijab, right? The question is, my dad never even had to ask that question. He didn't even know what that meant when he was growing up, or when, 20 years ago. That never came up. And it's like, now they're having to face it.
But also, he never questioned the nun. Why the nun wear the hijab, right? The same father, the same guy, the same
he
person.
would never. Yeah,
He would never even go to the church and say to the nun, "Why are you putting the hijab on your head?"
No,
Would he?
Well, the whole
Well, of
hijab
course.
thing is even out of the whole. I mean,
No,
hijab.
for the same argument. I just want to make sure that
Sure.
because in his mind, this is normal for the
Well,
nuns to wear that,
my dad
and
really
for
wasn't.
that
He wasn't
somebody in the
really a
street is not
Catholic. He
normal,
was
and
more,
that's really
he's
the whole contrast
United.
of the whole contrast.
Presbyterian.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off that way rudely.
No, it's fine. No,
But
it's fine.
really,
Yeah,
I mean, as I said, I don't think in the media, like mainstream media, I don't think we are hearing the so-called the right questions, the right conversations. Always everybody's so scared of say something wrong or offended somebody, or they're afraid of saying something, and here you go, a lawsuit or something. Or even if you want to go on social media and talk, you're afraid that you're gonna end up with the barrage of like haters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think too, Sam, like there's a big thing here with actual racism. So like looking at somebody that's black and being like they're less than me, which is crazy. That's
the arrogant stance.
I can't even fathom what that is. That says, okay, that person's First Nation, I'm better because I'm white. Like that's ridiculous. But I do see cultural bias being a bigger problem of people saying they're not less than me, but their perception of what culture should be and what it is in Canada before, they want to change the culture. Right. And I like it the way it was. And I think that's more of a sticking point for more Canadians that are here. It's not necessarily, and there are racists, of course there are, but the culture part of, I don't want to change the way we had it. It's been this way. I like it this way. It's Canada. I don't want to change it. I don't want to turn it to Saudi Arabia, even though that's not what's going to happen. Like that's not logical. I think Muslims now make up, I think it's 3% of the Canadian population. Like it's not even, it's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. But fear tells them, I've never had to deal with these things before, the hijab or, any other type of things that regard Muslim religion. Now I have to. Oh no, the world's on fire.
Yeah,
and
but Grant, and this is maybe also Chris, do you feel that it's okay to talk freely against I don't want to say as against Muslims, but is it okay to express your feelings toward or against like, oh, somebody is gonna come and question you or gonna be you're gonna held responsible versus talking about any other topic? And Chris, do you feel like is it more acceptable to be Islamophobic versus any other kind of racism, or
I mean,
I'm being being completely wrong?
I see that it is more acceptable, and to be honest, I don't like the term Islamophobia. I like the term anti-Muslim bigotry, because I think people are more after people, not after the religion. And there are people who are after Islam because they don't like the tenets of Islam. But I think there's also people who don't like Muslims because they have this Orientalist view that Islam is a religion for brown people. I'm a walking, talking example that I'm a white Muslim here. Hello, of European heritage. So it's religion for all of mankind, to put that kind of thing to bed. Now, it's the flavor of the week. There's all different types of bigotry. If you look, there was a Jewish, there's a rabbi in town at one point. I remember going to some sort of event, and he said, certain levels of transition happen in the world, right? 100 years ago, when Jews were trying to come to North America, that was stopped. Boatloads of Jews being turned back prior to
reaching the shore. Yes.
Exactly. Go back to Europe, and then those people end up in concentration and death camps, like deplorable stuff. So anti-Jew stuff, anti-Ukrainian, Eastern European behavior in the United States, anti-Italian,
Irish,
anti-Irish. Those people weren't even considered white, which is hilarious. Yes. Like, oh, they're Caucasian. Hello, it's Arabs are Caucasian. Now that everybody has basically had their turn at it. Now, Muslims, we're having our turn at it, but our turn at it is much longer. In the sense that now we have forms of media, as we talked about, where everybody and their dog can go ahead and write and pontificate their ideas without any editorial censorship. And not to say that censorship is something that is necessarily good, but think of the effort that used to be made towards, if I have an opinion, if I wanted my opinion to be known, I'd have to call in a talk show or write a letter to an editor of a newspaper.
Yeah,
and guess what? That would go through some eyes first before it ever hit the page or the airwaves. So the thing is, nowadays, we don't have that particular form of curation. And there's restriction, you know, and it's not to say that, you know, editorial behavior is good or bad. Like sometimes over editorializing can prevent actually great ideas from being out there. And then there's also other editorial behavior that is needed to actually hold back the goofballery, the stuff that should not be heard. But the thing is, that's always a tough line to walk. And I think it's just been super easy to espouse negative views towards Muslims, because I think also people conflate Muslims equal brown people, equal backwards society, equal Sharia law. They're conflating religion and ethnic identity, and they're conflating their struggle with understanding secular liberal values, with all these different things together that give it this weird circus. That they don't really know what they're talking about. And again, knowledge is power, and you really need to empower yourself by seeking out people who you can talk to and talk about it from a standpoint of suspending your bias and really listening and just opening up your ears. That's really what it's about.
Grant, do you share Chris's view on people being more relaxed to express their concern or their hate or their prejudice or discrimination toward Muslims, because if this is acceptable under anti-terror, like war and terror and terrorist and all that kind of stuff, but really stuff so many other things in between.
Like, is it happening more? So I guess the thing is
I want your opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I'm wrong,
this
say,
is
you know what?
the thing.
I mean, I'm not
trying
to put the word in your mouth.
Like, I'm not Muslim, so I don't know. Like, I would assume, just like you're seeing an uptick in anti-Asian speech, right? People are angry at Asian hate crimes and stuff like that. It because of the pandemic and what Trump said, and this type of stuff plays into that, as well as Muslims with. Still looking back on 9/11, we're still back there, and how that progressed and started this whole thing about terrorism and the war on terror. So is it increasing more, accepted more? I don't think it's accepted more, because you are getting terms like Islamophobia. And I do, Chris, I don't really agree with that term either. Like,
fair enough.
I'm not phobic of Islam. But I still have, obviously, I like Canada. You know, I look at it kind of like this, Chris. I'm a football fan. I like I like New England Patriots. They're my team, right?
Right.
And if you're a Browns fan, if anybody's a Browns fan, sorry out there, but you haven't done very well in a long time. So if you're a Browns fan and you come into the Patriots locker room and you say, "Hey, let's change stuff. Let's do it like we did there."
Yeah.
No, we don't want to change it. We want to keep it the way it kind of is. But we're going to grow. It's just there's growing pains, and it's not happening fast enough. And I don't know. And to be a Muslim and have somebody hate me directly would suck. Like, I wouldn't want that. And even at the rally, like when people kind of seemed like they didn't really care about, like there was some anti-oil and gas sentiment, and that small little bit, you know, kind of was like, that kind of hurts, you know, like we're all people. There's lots of different things going on. Or even like Muhammad's mentioned a couple times on there, like all white, like when we had our discussion the other time about Islamophobia, Sam, I got accused of being a racist. I don't think I said, well, one, we were talking about Islam, so it's not really a race. So I couldn't have been racist. But
that's why I use the term anti-Muslim bigotry, because Islamophobia, to be honest, again, it agrees with your statement, my friend, is that Islam is not a race. And the bigotry is towards the Muslim, the person who looks different from me. They come from this other place. They look foreign. They have behaviors that are foreign, because it's more about the bigotry towards the Muslim, not necessarily not being a fan of Islam.
I don't know. I don't know if I actually agree with that. I feel like it's the acts. It's not necessarily the people, because Muslim can be, like you said, you can be white, you can be a multitude of colors. Jesus was not white, by the way. If you so like you can be the Middle East, and it's the cultural things that the people don't understand. That's where it stems from. The mistrust, the questioning of what are the intentions, what is it going to change in our culture. I don't know have as much about color now. Does that mean that obviously black people aren't persecuted still, and there's still Black Lives Matter, which is an important thing to fight for them? Yeah, of course. Like there is that too.
Sorry, I brought Ikram Bilal just to let you know. This is the lady from Ontario area. She's specialized, and she's really study, and also she's very advocate against racism and hate and all stuff. Hopefully, Ikram will be our guest soon. But Ikram Bilal is saying systemic racism is a very serious and dangerous. Many applicants are invited to interview because of their names. Unfortunate. So that really this is just like we cannot deny the existence of these discriminations or racist act, but really people just in a way people like to do things with something that they're familiar with, not necessarily just because of hate the others as much as they feel like just like closer to.
It's also a lack of mindfulness, I would say, because if you think of it, in some cases resumes are now submitted into programs that actually screen the resumes, and they use algorithms to find certain things that help pick out the right candidate. And the inherent bias in the design of those algorithms is not out of a sense of overt racism. It's sometimes out of a situation of just not being mindful of how a design creates a system that then impacts other people negatively.
Right. Well, I want to apologize for all these people who I didn't have a chance to see all the comments, or I'm reading the comment as I go, and there's tons and tons and tons of absolutely beautiful questions and beautiful point of view.
Do we want to do questions now and respond?
So I would say we have to, what do you think, Grant?
Yeah.
Pick a questions here, because there's so many, and I'll give like if you can look at the comment and pick any question that you like, so you want to talk about it, and let's pick one, because it's so hard to put all the questions on the screen.
So there's one here actually that kind of stick out. It's from if I pronounce your name wrong, I do apologize. I believe it's Marwa. It says, could you please talk about racism in school for both kids and teachers? So
okay.
In my perspective, which is where I have to start because it's mine. When I grew up, like I said, in school, we didn't have any diversity in our school. In Tabor, there's none. Okay. My kids currently go to a school in Langevin. Well, they just graduated from there, down south, by the zoo or whatever. Anyways, their school is extremely diverse. My son's friends, East Indian, Arab, all over the place. I love it. It's one of the best things we love about that science school, because it was very diverse. And on our podcast, we had his friend, Ariane, to come on to the show and talk about racism. And he said he hadn't really felt any, but he knew his dad did. Right. And so I feel like our kids are the generation that are going to help with this, where they don't put up with it. They look past it, but they do make jokes with each other all the time about each other's race. And I feel uncomfortable with that, but I mean, they're doing it in this cyclical kind of thing where they're moving forward. And I mean, I have hope in the next generation for that. And with teachers, I would hope teachers aren't racist. I can't speak for anybody, but anybody that is ignorant and they're a teacher, that sucks. Yeah.
You want to answer that? You're going to pick your questions.
I'll pick mine. I think he answered that brilliantly. And I think it's good work. Maysoon Mansour, she's asking about the recent surge of Syrian immigrants, refugees specifically to Alberta, has been contributed to the rise. I think so, yeah. I think it has, unfortunately. Again, whenever there's a wave of people that are new to a land, And when that's coupled with economic downturn and uncertainty, you're going to get a fringe of people that again are just, you know, there's people who are naturally concerned with their economic futures, right? And they actually keep their head down and they keep plugging away, and they may not necessarily be contributing to the effort for anti-racism. And I'm not going to begrudge them for that. And they have methods and they have ways to deal with that privately with people in their lives. But then when it comes to like the people who are belligerently out there and meshing these ideas together and thinking that there is a connection between the two, that's just where the poison is. And unfortunately, that gets chained into Islamophobia, that gets chained into the bigotry against people.
Right.
And it's just, again, it's their inability to deal with it. And I think, again, what needs to happen for people is, again, dialogue. And folks like Grant and I who have maybe various, and we do have differing opinions and maybe strategies or tactics on how to do stuff.
Right.
We need to have conversations with our kinfolk, right?
Yeah,
Because honestly, we are the ones with the tongues and the cultural mores that are the same necessarily to have those conversations in private with the people that do make those particular blunders. And if we can eventually edge them towards a more middle path, a more, conscious lifestyle, I think
Right.
we'll have spent some time on some effort, because unfortunately, I don't think those folks who are the hardened hearts and souls on that
you won't
matter,
reach them. You won't reach them.
the average BIPOC person is not going to get to them because their heart is so hardened. It's up to people like Grant and I to speak to our own kinsmen and deal with it.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Absolutely. We have a gentleman here named Muhammad Ali Abed. Muhammad Ali Abed. I really like his input on so much. Like he's
rocking
contributed
it.
like so much.
watching
I'm trying to
him.
send him a link. Muhammad Ali Abed, if you're interested, I'd like to have you part of this panel, even for 10, 15 minutes or whatever time I allow. Depends on Chris and Grant. So I'll try to send a link to Muhammad Ali Abed. If you're interested, let me know so I can send you the link, because I think his input is very important to us. I just want to add one thing here regarding this comment by Maysoon. Maybe there is, but I did not really see it, especially here in Calgary and Alberta. I didn't see that the Syrian project or Syrian newcomers came to Alberta or into Canada contributed directly to the rise. Maybe this is another ammunition in the pocket of those people who just want to make it a big issues, for two reasons. Number one, because I think there's a lot of I mean, whether we like it or not, after the election was over in 2015, Syrian refugee became a Canada project, and all Canadians came to help out. Some voices here and there, I totally understand. So in a way, this is what Canada did for last 40, 60 years, welcome refugees all the time. So this is not new.
So
Vietnamese boat people.
Yeah, I mean, they did
Bosnians.
But also the other thing, what I think, why that's another reason why I don't think like the Syrian really were a major part of the rise of the hate and racism, because up till now, majority of the Syrian community, they did not compete head to head in the job market with other people to create that kind of like a guy kind of feeling like this guy came and took my job, or take my business, or take my whatever. So I think maybe over time we might start to hear this, but personally, that's my personal opinion. It's there, but I don't think it really increased the hate and racism. I think Trump, for sure, by far gave the tools to anybody sitting in the dark room and to vent out how they feel about all these issues. If you don't mind, guys, I want to share with you my own story, my own experience when it
Sure.
comes to racism. And if anybody say, if anybody, I'm still waiting for an answer for Abid, Muhammad Abid, Ali Abid. If you want to be part of it or not, please let me know. I want to share one thing, and and this is a question for you, Grant and Chris, because I want you to explain that to me. So people that I know over years, 20 some years, customers or friends, like they are like we're casual friends, let's say, right? Or casual or customers that I talk on a regular basis. It happens with several people, and I have to say white background or like say Caucasians, Canadian. I notice a conversation after 7 o'clock p.m. It takes completely different tone than during the day. During the day, it's just like we're all the same, we're equal, there's no problems, everything is fine. I like you, you like me, and all this stuff. But after 7 o'clock, sometimes when the beer is there and the people are a little bit more loose, and I can name actual people that I know, and it happens to me. A few of them call me when they're a little bit, let's say, called it drunk, and all of a sudden they just give it to me in terms of like, you're F this, you're this, and they would just brag and they say all that kind of crap. You're, I don't want to use these words, but you say, oh my goodness, is this the same guy that I know, let's say in the morning and this time? So it happens to me several times.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people are a little bit loose, I think it comes out.
The truth serum. The truth serum. Of
So the
alcohol.
question is, and I asked these guys, and I used one example to ask about the other one. I said, should I take it that this guy is being just like really serious and being racist? I said, oh no, it's just because if he said it when he's drunk, I don't think you really have to take it beyond that. But if he's act upon it, then yes, it is an issue. So here's the question. How do you explain to me as a victim of that? And I'm talking about people I know and we're screaming in my face just because he's drunk and he get all that crap out of his guts. So where's that coming from? Is that normal?
That's
or
called
just me-
liquid. That's
or just me
liquid.
being too
Liquid
oversensitive?
courage. That's liquid courage, man.
I say this, Sam. They're not. There's no way. And I'll speak from experience on this one because I've been drunk before.
Okay.
It is. I know it is liquid courage, but if you have it in your heart already, it'll bring it out. So that means that those people already had it.
Yeah.
So like they wouldn't be my friends anymore at all. Not like I wouldn't if somebody got drunk and told me some horrible things about myself and called my wife a bunch of names. We're not gonna be buddies anymore. Even if you're drunk. I'm sorry.
High
Because
five.
That's just that just doesn't there's no place for that. And you don't need to have people like that in your life. Like
Right.
you can cut them off and that's okay, dude. Like cuz I would totally cut them off. Like I couldn't understand why people would do that kind of stupid stuff. It does happen all the time. I can't say I've never had my friends say some horrible crap when they're drunk and you're like, okay, I know who you are now. But thank you for telling me who you are. So yeah, those people, Sam, they're just showing you who they really are. So just
Okay, guys. So if you don't mind, just keep the audience in a way engaged.
Yep.
I'm gonna get Muhammad Ali Abid. Would that be okay with you guys?
oh yeah, please. by all
Can I
means.
just address something? I saw a comment here from Sami Osama Abu Safi.
I saw that same one, I think, actually.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Achi, shame on you, Albertans. We're all Albertans if you're living here. I'm an Albertan, and I that is exactly what I'm talking about. Is that even though I'm a part of the Muslim community, I'm married to an Arab woman. Okay, that's offensive to me. Shame on me. I'm doing what I can, bro. I'm doing what I can. I'm
sorry, I
having
didn't
those.
see that.
I'm having those conversations in the dark with people who need those conversations. And just because Syria comes from, Syrian folks have a beautiful and wonderful ancient history all the way up, it doesn't diminish the fact that, I didn't get to choose that I was born here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose that I was born here from the parents that gave birth to me. So be careful with your language, bro. I mean, Afek.
I'm so sorry. I don't want to apologize on his own
don't
behalf.
have to apologize.
You don't,
on
Because-
Sam,
behalf.
you do not need to
I'm
apologize.
taking
I'm
care
going-
of it myself. I'm
Don't
taking
apologize.
care of it
I'm
myself.
glad you brought this up. So Grant,
That chokes me.
Yes.
What's that?
So I'll get Mohammed here with us if you don't mind. Just
Yeah. Like, I want to put a shout out to everybody's putting comments in there anyways. Like, everybody, I know everyone's putting stuff out there and there's a lot of good stuff coming up in the comments. There's one right here. So Grant, you mentioned the Canadian culture. Did you mean Muslims would affect it? Do you mean that the hijab or something else? Can you explain more, please? Okay. Yeah, actually, I totally can understand what you're saying there. So, and that's from Khadija. If I screwed it up, I totally apologize.
It's the kha sound, so it's Khadija, but do your
Thank
best,
you.
bro.
I'm
It's all
learning.
good. It's all good.
No,
Khadija.
I'm better. I just learned something. So
There
that's
you go,
freaking
bro.
awesome.
There you go. Yeah.
Khadija, thank you for your question.
Arabic 101.
I'll take as much as I can. Yeah, I think the cultural idea is that it will change what Canadians are. What I'll use for an example is, like, when I was a kid, we had the RCMP, the Mounties, actually. And there was a big push to actually have the Mounties be allowed to wear a turban. Now, my dad was crushed by that because for him, that Mountie was a Canadian symbol, even though that outfit's crazy with the red jacket and the little stripe in the pants. But it meant something to him. And he felt like because people wanted to get rid of the hat and put on a turban, that they didn't care about Canada as much as he did. And it's those type of things where we're changing culture. And it might seem totally like, does it matter? No, it doesn't really matter. And I actually think that's more inclusive to allow more people involved with it. But I do understand what his thought is, that that's changing the culture and we're appeasing somebody. Whereas let's say you go to Saudi Arabia or you live in Saudi, a woman's going to totally be covered. She's going to have to, because that's what's required of the culture and you can't change it. So that's where I mean by culture and why people are worried about that. It's those little incremental things, and everybody thinks, how many of the small things before it like goes off the rail? It won't. You know, we got, like I said before, there's not many Muslims in Canada to change that kind of culture, but it's those things that are afraid of. Ali, what's up, buddy? Nice to see you.
Thanks for joining us, Ali.
Do you go by Ali or do you go by
Yeah,
Muhammad?
just call me Ali. Yeah.
Okay.
The whole world calls me Muhammad otherwise.
No, I'll call you. There's lots of
Thanks,
Muhammads.
thanks for your,
That's what I'm
thanks for your
saying.
engagement
Yeah.
and your
And
comments.
so
It's really
unfortunately, there's
lovely.
some Muhammads that don't live up to the name.
No, a great chat. I'm just very engaged in this.
Well, I'm
I
happy to have the discussion with you, man. I think it's great.
And just a bit about me. I've lived in 3 provinces: Ontario, BC, Alberta. Now is my home since 2016, and I'm Pakistani from origin by background. And this stuff is very personal to me. I just doesn't matter if I've been a victim of racism or not. For me, it's like I see societies as pendulum, right? We go from one end to the other, and it's figuring out is because I have a lot of progressive friends. So I always listen to them, and also I try not to be in an echo chamber, and I talk to people who have very, what I call is alt-right values as well, because I just want to know what's up. And you got to know what's up.
It's super smart, man. It's super smart. Yeah,
And
that's
it's
a lot of people
time.
don't do it. Yeah.
And I think for me, as someone who is like, people think it's a Trump effect. There's a really good book. It's called The End of Liberal Democracy, and it's part of this transition that's happening, which is I think you got to look at cultural undertones behind all this stuff, and that's why I was saying was like, if you just take it as a recent phenomena, we're gonna miss the boat on this.
I agree.
I'm worried about like I'll be honest, like, so I'm setting up a conference with a few of my colleagues for work, and we're trying to say is it cannot be a white male panel. I get the current tones, I get it, it makes sense, but what are we moving towards then? Right? You're going from one tyranny to another tyranny. And that's the hard part for me, is trying to figure out, is like, what's the balance here? And when I ask my progressive friends, they say is like, it doesn't matter right now. We need just to get the balance of power right now. And I'm like, but there's a means, there's a method to the way to do it. There's a means to an end. We don't know what that end is, and people are, I don't care how we get there. We just need to get there. And this utopian, that's what I'm worried about. Is like this will just create more tribalism, and we're seeing this, and it's not going to solve. And I'm worried right now, Sam. I'll be honest. Like I can, as a Muslim, can play the Muslim card so well, and I can get
as a victim.
100%, and I can use my minority card to be like, I have the right to speak on this, and I know sometimes like I can use that card for my advantage right now. And that's the thing, is like, is that the most best approach of moving this forward? That's the question I have more for this group. Is this approach right now? I'm all like what you are talking about, Sam, about the whole people talking in their own personal space. Like that's to the point where we are trying to become George Orwellian and saying like mind control, like your personal conversation you can even have. You can't even have those.
The police are on the way. Yeah.
Right. Like that's scary, right? Like, but we're talking about implicit bias testing in the workplace. And like, and I have asked people, I'm like, where does the line between implicit bias and preference come?
Absolutely.
Grant has the right to have a preference. I work with my Pakistani. I like my Pakistani community. What you gonna do about it, right? But if the moment Grant does it, he gets called out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, this is where I'm like, I just don't know how.
Well, this is okay. Chris, what's your?
I love it.
What do you,
I think I agree with
Chris.
it. I think
agree with that?
I think what Grant is also, I don't know, maybe Grant will correct me if I'm wrong, or
I would definitely correct you
on his opinion. But I think I think what people need to maybe focus on is that when it comes to sharing information about cultures, religions, and what have you, the idea is to not enforce that, say, a person like Grant accepts what I have to say. He doesn't have to accept it, but understand is a different thing. Understanding means you've heard the information, you're digesting it, you're processing it, and you go, yeah, I hear where you're coming from. But it doesn't mean that, Grant necessarily is having to be like all high fives. I accept everything you say, Chris, or I accept everything that Muhammad has to say, or what anybody else has to say. And the thing is, I think out of that understanding, you can create respect. And you go, I respectfully disagree. Thank you very much. And you can have that alternative, let's say, opinion and have the right to your own thoughts, right? Without being called out for it. And the thing is, there are egregious, immoral things that happen in society, like where abuse and oppression happens. Those are the things that definitely need to be called out. But if somebody has something on the basis of an ideology that necessarily doesn't harm people, I think that's where we have to step off the gas. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And try to advance our own personal agenda on somebody.
What I would say, Ali, is your pendulum reference is perfect, because the pendulum is swinging far that way to the left to be over inclusive, and maybe sometimes that is hurting us and pushing us tribally in the different things. Like I know my friends that work on the rig that would be very conservative men do feel a little bit like they're getting attacked all the time. Like, if you're white, you're racist. You can't really speak on other people because you've never felt their oppression. And I get that part, but I also believe that pendulum, it will swing back. It'll come back once we do have to equalize some of this. We have to give some opportunities. We have to accept that our own biases are a problem. And as a white Canadian male, I can't speak for every one of us, but we do have those biases. I just talked to my dad about it last night, and he's like, yeah, I know I am a little racist. And that's a huge thing, to accept that part and say, yeah, I am. I'm going to work through it. And that's great. My dad's amazing. He's 65 years old. Like, he's going to get mad because I think I just gave him the wrong age.
I love
he's going to be so pissed. He's like, I'm not 65. You son.
You son of a gun.
You son of a gun. Thank you. Son, that wasn't what he was going to say, but that was it. And so the affirmative action, that kind of stuff, like Does it help? Does it not help? What you're trying to say is, yeah, I think that this is important, that the pendulum does swing. We let it swing. There's going to be some casualties along the way. There's going to be some divisiveness. It will make tribalism, but it will come back. We'll all come back together, I think, stronger, because we're able to look at this stuff and say, okay, it's out there. Now we know the steps to make it better. It's the whole. It's part of the process. It's just part of the process.
We're 15 minutes past the hour, and
because we're
there's
awesome.
there's salam. This question is going to start with Ali. He says, well, if we have, maybe we should it's better to talk about suggestions, find solutions for this, and try to improve the system instead of just attacking each other. So if we want to start talking about improving the system, so which area, Ali, you think we should start first? I mean, even if we're gonna wrap up this conversation with, let's say, with one idea toward the solution.
I use another analogy. So I work in healthcare. So an example is with addictions. So people have addictions they're dealing with, and people say, like, just say no to drugs. And that's it. And that's what people want these days, is like, just stop being a racist. That doesn't work like that. Right? It doesn't work like that.
Nobody listens to. I was listening to Z-Dog MD, and they were talking that.
That's the guy. That's the guy. So,
oh man, vibing. Cool.
So like, and even in, like, from a Muslim perspective, like, it took 23 years for a message to be stuck to people. It's the time factor is so critical for understanding. Like I said, like, you will make these policy changes. Like, we made changes in saying, like, we want to be, like, civil rights happened like in 60s, 69, 70, right?
Yep.
But there's a cultural lag and mindset thing that takes time. People don't catch up. And I think just people need patience with people. But right now we don't have patience in social media. We're an age of cancel culture, or saying, like, virtue signaling. And that's what, for me, is like the best thing you can do is just be patient with people, like, and give people latitude. Like, it takes you a lot of time to change over bad habits. Like, even a simple habit is like, stop eating at night. I'm still going to eat at night. You know that.
Because it's good. Right? I'm hungry.
Right? Like, it's going to happen. And so same thing with racism. Like, it's just going to take time for people to acknowledge and even if they don't, have some compassion, man. Like, just, that's all I can say.
Ali, maybe me and you and the rest, we should talk about our internal inner racism we have. And there's times, my goodness, it's like whatever. So that question is for you, Chris. Where should we start? What would be your way? I mean, your suggestion for a system improvement?
I think everything starts with the self. So if you can't necessarily change. If people on a mass scale can't change, and if you're empowering yourself to change, then you have a duty to start helping the change happen in a gentle and mindful way. Because I honestly think, like, I subscribe to the fact that racism is a spiritual disease of the heart. So if you're working on that yourself, and you're always going, hey, whoo, where am I in this, and how am I helping it? And do I know anybody who could maybe do with my gentle help, moving away from that negative spiritual disease of the heart? I think it's for me to come and have those conversations one-on-one with those people, to get them to edge closer to something that creates a harmonious kind of mind frame, so that then when they are stepping out into the world, they're actually not engaging in the reprehensible behavior that comes along with the racist stuff that comes along with society.
Perfect. Grant.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay, let's try to improve the system.
Can you solve world peace?
Where will you start?
Can I solve world peace? I have the answer for that. Hold on one second. It's in my pocket. Oh, yeah. It's in my other pants. Sorry. Crap. We'll have to do this again. I really think it all starts with empathy. That's it. It starts with me seeing Ollie, and me seeing Sam, and me seeing Chris, and seeing myself in you guys. And whatever that means for whatever's in your past or in your life. And what Ollie said, giving time. Like, it won't be us that solve it, but it could be my kids that fix it, and the empathy is that we're not perfect. That's also the empathy we need to know, that we all have our biases, that It's not just one group's problem of racism. We need to work together to do this. That's the point. We're the same. Like we're the freaking same.
We bleed the same
Absolutely.
blood.
We
So absolutely, and maybe if you allow me just to throw my 2 cents into it, I really
Of
think
course.
if we can at least agree that these problems do exist, I think that would be a major step toward the solution. Because to me, it seems like it's half the battle between people who even deny these problems exist and even deny that they are doing it to other people, or they're forcing it on other people, and then the other half who trying to convince them that we do have racism.
Oh, there is racism. I think we can all agree that there is racism. We're all.
Do you
we've
think we all agree we don't have racism?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, I have
And
tons of
there is
examples to say no.
There is racism, and we've all been racist, I think, in our lives. We've said jokes, we've talked about people, we've culturally biased. We're in this together. No one's perfect in it.
Okay.
Mhm.
I really think personally there's a lot of people who don't see it that way. Don't see it that's being racist. They don't see it that they have hate to others people. They think it's the other who are doing it to them, and they just defending their coexistence or their own interest or their own rights. So yes, nobody say if you wanna categorize racism as I'm better than you and you are less than me, I think we all know that we all agree this is wrong. But I'm talking about the actual behavior. When you apply for a job, if I put my name, if you ask me when I call you and I want to do business with you, let's say I'm an alarm business. If you need an alarm system, call me. So that's a free advertisement for me. If you phone me and you want an alarm system, and I answered the phone and said, yes, this is Osama. What can I do for you? And then the other call said, this is Sam. What can I do for you? Are you telling me this is just going to be equally received the same? Absolutely not.
No, but that's going to take time. It takes integration. It takes more people like yourself, more people with different names like Muhammad, like to get in these systems where then it isn't that big of a deal anymore. It's time,
So
But-
what I'm
but,
trying to say is people to agree these problems do exist, and it's so deep because people react or act upon it even without even acknowledging it or without even publicly saying, let's say, I would say I'm not racist, but I do so many racist things during my daily course, and I didn't even know that I'm being racist toward other minorities or being racist against somebody else. How would I know? So, and that's the transition that I'm going through, is to accept my part first, and that will help me to start addressing so-called the other people part. And I think this is where a lot of people have a really hard time accepting it. I mean, especially in the Arabic culture. I mean, Chris, you can say that. How many Arabi will say they are racist? They would never admit it.
Oh,
they would
there's
never
denial.
ever admit
There's
it.
denial. But it exists, and we have it in like the Hadith, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I'll say this. I'll just put it out there. When Bilal ibn Rabah, the black Abyssinian who was formerly a slave and was emancipated by Sayyidina Abu Bakr. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when there was a companion of the Prophet who was a Muslim who had accepted Islam. He actually said to Bilal, "Oh, you son of a black woman," which is the equivalent of the N-word.
Yeah.
Okay.
The N-word, yes.
And then Bilal came to Prophet Muhammad and said, "Hey, our friend here, my brother, has slandered me, has said this against me." So Prophet Muhammad went to the brother and said, like, you still have jahiliyyah in you. You still have ignorance in your heart. And Bilal and the man made up. And the story is beautiful. They made up. But the thing is, it's still at the end of the day, we all have work to do. A religion can change a person's heart, but still a person's heart still even needs more work after that religious change. Or maybe a traumatic change in somebody's life can change their heart, but they still might have more work to go through. The work never stops. The work never stops. That's what I'm trying to get at.
I think we have to wrap it up here. It's 1:24. So I'm going to give like a quick minute to each one of us. And I will start with the youngest. Who's the youngest here?
I think it's probably Ali, probably.
Is it my luscious white?
It is. You're
black
beautiful.
beard? It's the
You're
black.
beautiful. You're beautiful,
It's the
man.
black beard. I have a few white hair. I'm not gonna lie.
Catch up.
Sam, I think
Ali, do you think this type of conversation is really helping out?
100%. And I think the next topic needs to be about within the community as well, Sam. Like,
Yeah, so true.
addressing our taboo topics, which is unheard of. I would say is my principal when I was in grade 4. She basically said to me once is, life is a traffic jam. You need to make your car out of it, and you got to be the good driver.
That's right. Oh man,
I like it, dude.
sage
Yeah,
advice.
That's great. Your fourth
Yeah,
grade teacher was smart.
I know. I was like, yo, I just want to get home, man. Like, and I think that's one of the things that what this also we're trying to do is we're trying to put our baggage on someone else sometimes, right? We project our things, and we need to say what's within my control. I'll be honest, the immigrants, I'm gonna be as straight as possible. Majority of immigrants want to stay in Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto. I grew up in Toronto too. They don't want to move to other city. Their jobs. I moved from Hamilton, Ontario to Victoria, BC for my first job because I wanted a job. I didn't give a crap. And there are jobs there, but there's a trade-off you make a lot of times in saying like, you want to work in Yukon, you'll get the job you want. They want engineers, they want physicians, they'll take it. But people are like, no, I want to stay with my culture. You just made a trade-off. Then you're going to work the taxi job too. Then you made a trade-off, right? And people in small communities, I lived in Medicine Hat, I've lived in small communities. People are in small communities sometimes so nice. I am, and for me, I don't make judgment on generalizations. It's person to person at the end of the day. You cannot let people decide who you are based on the group, right? And same thing will go, we tried Muslims say we're not the terrorist. Same thing, white man's thing is not everyone white man's thing. Done.
That's right.
I'll stop there. Yeah.
Well said,
That's
Ali.
huge. Yeah.
Next up, younger. Who's a little bit older than Ali?
I'm a little bit older.
Start counting the white hair. Okay, who has the lesser white hair?
Who's got a
I show it the most. I don't know.
Okay, sure. Okay, we'll go Grant. You look younger than Chris. I don't know.
I'm 44, so I don't know where that.
Okay,
comes
so
up.
then it is me then.
Okay,
you
go.
go.
There you go, buddy.
Then it is
Go
me.
ahead, Chris.
So I don't know what else to say other than try to remain as positive as possible, with this whole it is frustrating to see the racism that is out there. I'll say that the Asian Stop Asian Hate thing is really important to me.
So true.
And the reason is because my sister-in-law is Japanese and my nephews are half Japanese.
And also the blacks, the racism against black and indigenous people. We did not mention all that stuff.
We didn't even mention all that. I mean, we have all of those. There's all these forms of, there's a form of racism for almost everybody, and we all have to deal with it. And to the folks who maybe are upset and say well, I don't have this in my heart, I'm not racist. Please stop being delusional. And this is not, delusion happens to everyone. Okay. It's a human problem. It's not as if you're special and you are perfect. We make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, there are people in your community that are willing to help you bridge the gap, help you learn something so that you understand, not just necessarily full-heartedly accept, understand, and just be open. Open your heart, open your eyes. It's not to make you hate yourself, okay? And if you want to go through a process of rectifying yourself and asking forgiveness and reparations or whatever you want to think, that's your own business. But the thing is, just stop hiding behind the idea that I'm not this way. You might be. And it's okay to let that go, because when you let it go, the opportunities that unfold before you and getting to know the rest of mankind is far more greater for you, I would say.
Sorry,
good. That's
before I move to Grant, I just want to mention this is my brother from Syria. His name is Abu Ziyad. So Abu Ziyad, he is in Damascus, Syria, as we speak. So Assalamu alaikum, Abu Ziyad. How are you,
Assalamu
my
alaikum,
brother?
Abu Ziyad, mashallah.
So he's absolutely an
Abu Ziyad.
amazing guy. And he says here in Arabic, there's no difference between Arabi and Ajami except in the righteousness. So he
That's
just
right.
reminds us of there is no difference in people. It's just like your actions. It's really, it's not like
how
it's
you
not the
carry
color.
yourself.
So
Yeah,
tahiyati
you
like
carry
Abu
yourself.
Ziyad. Sorry, Grant, you're.
I just happened to see a comment there from Sammy again saying you guys are nice people, but you represent less than 20 to 30% of the population. And you know what, Sammy, I'm going to tell you, I totally disagree with that. I've worked with lots and lots of people from all different walks of life. I've been in Cuba, I've been in Albania, I've been in Saudi, I've been in the United States. And yes, I've met some hard-nosed people, but I've never met someone that if you can actually have a conversation with them, you're not going to be able to see a little bit of yourself in them and they'll see themselves in you. And we just have to do more of this. This is the shit that really matters. Not to say that, but I mean,
Absolutely.
So true.
We need to just try harder and understand that there are tons of good people, and even good people make mistakes too. Even good people think wrong and they focus on the wrong things. We're just human beings. We're trying to make it through. We're trying to raise our families. Try not to screw them up, our kids up too bad. At least I'm not.
So true. So, yeah, so true. I don't know. I'm having also a little bit difficulty with what Sammy is saying. I think he's being very aggressive tonight. Knowing Sammy, and he commented quite a bit, and I want to thank him for his engagement on all topics.
Please, that's great.
But sometimes some of the word, just not because we have a conversation, that means we can say whatever we want, just without really regard to people's feelings and stuff. I mean, as much as I understand some of the word you said, but it really hurt. You just generalize everything. I don't know how many times you've been in Alberta.
It's too general. It's too general.
Yeah, it is too general. I don't know how many times you've been in Alberta.
Is Sammy in Alberta?
No, I think he's in Toronto, Ottawa, somewhere there.
That's okay. Yes, we have an image problem here in Alberta. A lot of people think of us as like backwards hicks and stuff like that, rednecky and all that kind of stuff. We're not. Calgary and Edmonton are pretty damn cosmopolitan, and we've really grown out of that. We just have a bit of that Western flair and everything like that. And some people, it's affiliated with conservatism and all that. I think most Albertans are politically centrist, to be honest. And they're just looking to take care of themselves.
We have a Muslim mayor in Calgary.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
We got to kind of
and like Edmonton votes NDP all the time.
So Sammy's saying he's from Ottawa.
Okay, and we have an image problem, and yes, and Quebec has a problem too. I get mad about Quebec a lot too, and because I have family from there, and I don't like what Quebec's doing to the minorities and the kind of crap around Bills 21 and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, look, image problems. We have image problems everywhere. Muslims have image problems. Albertans have image problems. This person has image. Like at the end of the day,
that's perfect.
There's a lot of us
symbiotic.
A lot of us have crappy PR, to be honest, and it's not going to be solved in this utopian way. It's like everybody's going to think we're all perfect.
Well, you can tell Sammy's
work.
He's passionate about, and he mentioned the Syrian girl that killed herself because
I would say so.
Yeah, and I understand. Like that's horrible. I don't even know what to do with that. Like, how do you? That sucks that something like that would happen. And there's nothing else to say, but that's just horrible, and it's not acceptable, and that's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks guys for absolutely.
I love you, Sammy. Though. No worries, bro.
Oh yeah, we do. Sammy with I think by the way his name is Osama too, like my name.
Yeah, he's got Osama.
Maybe that's why.
The lion that pounces, man.
Ali, thanks for joining us, Ali. Grant, I always enjoy the chat, just like me and Chris, we always do this wonderful talk. But I really think hopefully we managed tonight to bring some kind of like a fresh air to the conversation. Yes, maybe we didn't really concentrate on one specific narrow conversation. We just have it broad conversations because really we want to be a very light breeze on a Friday night. It's a holiday, long holiday.
But racism is broad. Like, it's not simple, and there's so many components. So I think this is the perfect conversation.
I think if anything,
and I want to say thanks to Ali for coming on here, dude. Like, seriously, I love your point of view, and it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Sam, for the opportunity. Nice to meet you, Grant. Nice to meet you too, Ali.
Chris.
You know, it's wonderful. Great. Awesome.
Thank you, guys. And inshallah, we will definitely continue our chit chat for good of all of us. Alhamdulillah, we live in a beautiful country. Alhamdulillah, we live in a beautiful city. And yes, we do have small problems, or we do have challenges, but this is how we're going to solve them, by talking, by addressing them, by acknowledge them, and also give other people the right to speak their minds, and also to give other people their space, so we can get our space. Thank you very much. Ali, thanks for coming up. Salam alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam. Greetings of peace, y'all.
Peace.
Greetings of peace, y'all.
I'm an atheist.